Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I am doing a different view this time because it's going to be easier to see all the details. Hello. I am just coming over a cold, so hopefully my raspy voice does not bother you much. Okay, so I am going to show you my supplies while we just wait, I think like 2 more minutes, and then we'll get started. I have here a detailed brush. So a number 0 to a number 2 is great for doing the details on the cardinals. And I have a small flat brush. I also have a larger one. So some bright brushes. Those are good for doing the details on some of the birch trees. So you can see some of the birch tree details. And for the background, I like to use a bright brush as well. Yeah, I've done this one a few times. Also, I just want to let you know that you can use a fan brush if you are feeling it. You can finally take out that fan brush if you've been meaning to use it or haven't used it much for some of the details on the birch trees to make more of the bark texture. And we will get started, I think, in 1 more minute. So for paints, I always like to use my primary colors. So that's bright yellow or primary yellow and bright red, not the orange kind. Okay, so not the orange kind. Phthalo blue and black and white. If you have a premixed violet, you can use that too. Okay, who's ready to get started? Let me know if you are ready. You have a paper towel, water cup. Okay, yeah, let's get started. Let's do it. So we're going to start with our background. And I'm using one of my larger brushes here. So take a little dip in your water, wipe some of it off. We don't want too much water on our brush. And then to start mixing, we're going to take 1 to 2 parts red. This is just a mixing palette I have. And a little dip of blue, maybe a little bit more. Mix that together. I'm going to take another little piece size of blue so that it's turning into pretty much a dark violet color, which I mentioned that you can actually, it looks so dark, it almost looks black. If it looks really, really dark, just add a little touch of white and it should brighten it up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to start from the very side of my canvas. This is my left side. I'm wondering if the video is just mirror imaging it. So, you can do it on the left side. And notice how I'm using the flat side. I'm kind of doing like a cross hatching technique here. So do that and just go a few inches in. And you can change up your purple if you need to as you go, to the purple that you like best. So I'm doing my cross hatching, and if you have a pre-mixed violet, once again, just use a pre-mixed violet. That should do the trick. You can always add a touch more blue, like phthalo blue, primary blue, or a touch more red if you want it more on the red side. So somebody is asking, I think a couple people are asking about supplies. You can always rewind, you can pause and take your time. Again, I'm using phthalo blue, bright red, and bright yellow, along with black and white. So this is more of my violet color that I have. And notice how the edge right here, it's not fully complete with it's very choppy. So I want it to be choppy. I did more of a cross hatch, back and forth using the side of my brush just to get the texture going already onto my canvas. Okay, you don't need to wash off your brush. So what I do is if you have extra little bits of paint, just do some of that extra cross hatching. It's okay if it's all dry and not consistent. That's okay. Just get a little bit extra off of your brush onto your canvas on the side. You don't need to wash it off. And I'm going to show you what we're going to mix next. We're going to take a scoop of yellow or of white. Look at that. I just dropped it on my purple. Scoop of white and a little dip of yellow. Okay. Along with a couple piece sizes of red. I say 1 to 2. Starting to turn a little bit onto a peachy pink color. So not too much yellow, because with purple, when it mixes, it tends to make a lot of browns. And you don't want it to be, too yellowy, because it's not going to mix very well. It's going to turn very green. So you want a little bit more pink. You want more red added to make it look a bit more pink. And just test it out. Just test it out next to it. If you like it, perfect. You can always adjust your color by adding more red or maybe a touch more yellow if you want it to be more peachy looking. And notice how it's kind of more earthy and it's not as vibrant. That's what I'm going for. I'm going to start right next to my purple, doing the same technique. Okay, do the same technique. Use up a lot of your paint. And then start dragging it over to your wet purple so that it gets a little bit of a blend. It's going to pick up some of that purple. It's not going to make any brown colors. Feel free to take, feel free to take a little dip of water should you feel like it's too dry. See how I'm just slowly going into my purple, letting it blend a little bit. And how's it going for you guys in terms of mixing and transitioning over to this peachy kind of pink tone? So I'm going to continue this color just a little bit more until I have about a fourth of my canvas, maybe a third to a fourth of my canvas pretty much empty. Just use up that extra paint, remember, to rub it in. Try to get most of your paint off of your brush. And still, I don't wash off my brush because I like all the colors to mix and mingle with each other. I like the look that it brings for the abstract background. However, that's not to say you can't wash it off. Of course you can if you like it more of a clean look in terms of having each color more segregated, but I like the colors mixing a bit. And then I will show you the next color to mix on my palette here. Who here has painted with me before? Okay, I think we were ready for the last little bit here. We don't need to wait for things to dry. And I know that you guys can always pause this if you want to take more of your time. I like to work pretty fast for mixing the background just so that things are not drying in between and they are mixing as we are painting. So I'm going to, again, take another scoop of white and just take a dot of yellow. So you're going to see how it's really, really light here? It almost looks white. Let's just use that and start on the very corner for the opposite side. A little bit of a fill here. It's almost white looking. It actually looks very white. It's going to help blend between the really light corner in with our pinkish sort of purpley area over here. I'm trying to think of the name for this color. I don't know the technical name for this one actually, or the proper name. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit more yellow and just a little dip of red. So it's it's kind of more of a peach color now. It's definitely more of a peach color, more white. So it's just really light. It's really bright, and you can go darker if you want to go lighter, you can. You can always add a bit more yellow if you want it to be a bit more yellowy now. I think I don't need it too yellow. I like it to be a bit orangey peach instead of too yellow. And then let's merge these two colors together. So we will do just that. Use up a lot of your paint into the empty section. And just light little cross hatch as you get less paint into your previous color. So it goes over top, has a bit of a blend, and it's got a bit of a crossover so that it's not just one color, one color, one color. It's when you have little paint left, you can do a couple little cross hatchings into this color to make it look like it's fading into this color. Grabbing a bit more paint and just getting the last little empty bits on my canvas. And I'm going to leave this alone for like a minute or two. We can do any touch-ups that need to be done. If you want to go back and add another layer of some of your purple, this section here, whatever color you use, like mostly the pinky, almost peach color. And then over here, if you want to add more white onto the end, it's usually best to wait for it to dry before you keep mixing over the same colors. And that's when things can get muddy and making browns. Yeah, so what do we think of our background so far? Nice abstract look. Also, a second coat on these colors will make it more opaque. It will hide your white canvas in the background. It gives it a more rich, deep color. Perfect. And this technique, hopefully you learned something with, you don't have to usually I wash off my brush between colors, but for this background, when I made it, I didn't really do that so that all these colors mix between each other, and it gives it a very soft background look instead of, I'm more of a muted type of person. So this is actually still very vibrant for me, but I like the soft purples and towards the pinks and yellow. Well, I'm glad you guys like the background. Welcome in, Vicky. Thanks for joining again. And for those who joined me before, I see you have. Great. Okay, so now I'm washing off my brush, and just let me know if you're ready to do a few touch-ups on our colors here. One last time, let it dry for a minute. Change your water after we finish the background, and we'll start on our birch trees. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a touch up on our background. Hopefully we are ready. So I'm just going to work into the background again. You can mix your color again. And the great thing is that you don't have to have the exact same color. You can mix it up a little bit, maybe go a little bit darker, a little bit more blue, stuff like that. And it already helps mix different colors into your background. Okay, so I just grabbed a little bit more red. So I'm grabbing some red here and mixing my purple again. So about a scoop of red, a little dip of blue, or grab your violet. You can add some white if you want it to be even deeper. If you're thinking, okay, the contrast is not quite to your liking, you can just go a little bit darker over here, and you can see it gets much deeper in tone. I added a little touch of white, so you can see it has a bit more vibrant look now. And if you are into the muted look, you can always add in a touch of black, provided it has a dot of white. So you can always tone it down with a touch of black. So notice how I'm starting from the edge again. And get off a lot of your paint. Do the cross-hatching thing. Flat side of your brush as usual. And it is a dry brush, so I'm not trying to put too much water or add water to my brush really. You can, however, if your paint is really thick. I know that everybody has different paint. Just adding a little bit of paint at a time and getting a little bit of this color in towards the middle, just because I like the way that it transitions over. I think it adds to the texture. And again, I'm not washing off my brush. I think I took off almost all my paint. I just have a little bit of that undertone of color left on my brush. And I'm going to mix somewhere about the same color that I did in the middle, if you want to touch up that color as a second coat. So red, dot of yellow, and a little piece size or two of white, or you can go much lighter. Actually, I'm going to go a bit brighter. Yeah, I went a bit brighter here. So I'm just taking off the extra paint. I need to wipe some of this off. I don't want it to be chunky. Test it out. Make sure you like it. And just go over top of some of your purple, start around the middle. You can leave some gaps in between. So it's almost like you can see a bit of the layering. You just trail it into some of that purple. And even into your lighter color. Yeah, Laura, that's a good question. Mine looks more blue than purple. It actually is a true violet in person. I think on camera that pigment is not transferring very well. The other colors are transferring very well. There's just, I think, I think purple might just be an issue. However, I do like the fact that it looks a bit bluish, kind of indigo. It's still cool looking. So if you have yours more blue looking, it's going to look great. This is acrylic. Someone's asking if this is oil or acrylic. This is definitely in acrylic because we're going to be using white soon. And for oil, it would be a little bit difficult to put white over top right away. And this is my dark purple. This is my dark purple again. So very abstract for the background right now. When you feel you're done, change your water because we're going to go to white and make all of our birch trees. And yeah, let's just let this dry for a couple minutes. Take a step back, look at your painting, see if you want to change anything. This is pretty forgiving in terms of the abstract look. I find that you can change things up easily. When someone's asking, when do you know that it's enough? That's a great question too, because it's up to the artist. It really is. You can keep playing around with it, and it will technically never be done until you feel like it is done. So I think I'm going to do just one more little touch up. Just a couple little of that pink stuff here on the side and middle, and I think, yeah, that's good. I'm just going to stop touching it. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm good with this. I like the very wishy-washy kind of look with the colors, how it's all over the place. When I first made this, every time I make this painting, it's always a little bit different in terms of color and yeah, just a little bit of variation with the color sometimes. And I will go change my water, although that's not a requirement. You can, if you don't change your water, you tend to get a little bit of that color into your birch trees, which is not a bad thing. It's kind of nice to have that reflection, but yeah, it's good to step away, change your water so that you have about 2 minutes of time of drying. And I'll be right back. Okay, so I am back. Let me know where you guys are. Is this completely wet or is it like a little bit dry? Let me know. If it's kind of damp, it's still okay. Yeah, and let me know in comments too, or even on Facebook when you show your results. We love to see results. You can let me know what you thought of the background, if it was easy. I feel like it's easy just because you don't have to worry about copying me in terms of exact color matching. Yeah, slightly sticky is okay. So I think just make sure you have a bunch of white. We're going to start our birch trees. Someone's asking about hair dryers. Yes, hair dryers will help speed up the drying time, of course, but I will not be using a hair dryer right now. I'm okay. Mine's pretty much dry. I feel like I paint pretty fast so that it dries ahead of time. And if you've layered it on a bit too thick, that's not a problem. You just have to wait longer, maybe go get a hair dryer and speed up the drying process. But we will start on our birch trees and then you can pause it and you can do it when yours is ready. So you can watch me for a second. In terms of a brush, now I showed you a flat brush. Whatever flat brush is your favorite, a bright brush, you can use any one of these. You can even use the same large one we were just using. And the reason is because you can use the thin or the flat side both as you're putting it on. So I'll just use the big brush again. And I'm grabbing plain white here. So I'm going to start on the side. This one's my bigger birch tree that I'm making. I'm just going to pull it all the way up. It's pretty much going to pick up some of your background color. That's okay. So you can see with mine, it's doing it a bit. And I'm doing it a little bit bumpy. So you can use the thin side here and just make it a bit more fluid and outlined to your liking. Trees are not perfect. Try not to just do a straight, perfect stick. It's not going to look very natural. So I'm going to go out of my way to make some of the sides a bit more bumpy and uneven. Okay, so you'll see, because it picked up some of my background, I'm not going to just keep layering the paint. Avoid at all costs to do that. The reason is that it's just going to look more and more streaky, and it's going to keep making it more and more your background color. It's never going to get more white until it's fully dry. So this is where we have to have just a little bit of patience before you do a second coat. So that is my first one with no branches right now. I washed off the brush. I'm going to take more white and just work on my next ones. So by the time I'm finished my last one, this might not be fully dry still, but as we wait just another minute or two, then you can do a second coat with more ease and not stressing out about it being fully white. Leave a bit of a gap as far as you really want to. I think I'm just going to do it not perfectly straight either. See how it's over here, and it's just going to kind of be a little bit wobbly in a way. Oh, someone's asking about their acrylic paint on how to basically add. So you're just adding a medium, like you just add like a medium to it just to keep it wet for longer. With acrylic, I don't really do that actually. What I normally do is just add a touch of water to my paint, which is already a bit watery. If it's really, really thick, yeah, you just have to add a little bit of, I would just add a bit of water to it. Okay, so I washed it off again and taking more white paint from my last birch tree, which I'm going to put right around. So where it's ending, it's about the middle at this point where it's going to end. See, this one's thinner, thicker, and this one I'm going a bit thicker again. I'm trying to keep a little bit of variety into my painting here. So they're not all the same trees, that you didn't copy paste for each tree. Now I'm washing that off again. And I will wait 2 minutes so you guys can ask any questions if you want to. Go get a hair dryer, blow dry it. Okay, so someone's asking about the size of the brush for the birch trees. I said any size is actually fine. So you can use a half size, you can use a 1/2 inch size, you can use a much larger one. So even a size 12 is fine because you can use the full width of it, or you can also use the thin edge. To me, it doesn't matter because I use the thin edge to just clean up the edges and make them more crisp and fill in between. Okay, how is our drying going? Yeah, mine's still a bit wet. It's hard to just wait for it to fully dry because if you keep going over it again, it's just going to keep pulling up your background color. Okay, so someone's asking about this middle color here that I used. I just mixed, basically you're mixing like a pea size of red and then also a pea size of white, so it turns into a lighter pink, maybe an extra dip of white and a little dot of yellow to get it more pink peach in color. I think I'm going to wave my canvas around just for a minute, and then we will do our second coat and put in some branches. Okay, let's see if we're good on this. Okay, are we ready to do our second coat of the white and to start making some branches too? I'll show you the brush for branches as well. I would just use a detailed brush. So something like this. This is a number 2. Something smaller is probably best if you want better control, or if you're using a much smaller canvas. All right, white paint again, starting on the same, just the first birch tree that I started with. Try not to just don't rub it into your canvas, just in case it might pull your background color again. And you're back to square one, basically, for coats on your birch tree. There, I'm just going to leave that. Some more white. And then I'm going to make my branches. So I do like to use a little bit of water onto my brush while I'm picking up my white paint. So just dipping in the water, picking up some white paint, and then just twirling the brush a little bit so that it stays a bit thin on the end. So I'm just kind of twirling it around like that. And then let's add in our branches. Let's start on the side right here. So about, it doesn't matter, about the middle I think is fine. Just do slightly going up and out. Make it thicker where it's connecting to the tree. And then you can thin it out as you get towards the edge. So that's pretty important. Just having a nice flow from your tree. You want to make it thicker, like as if it's coming from inside the tree here. So it's just flowing down and then kind of going up, but not a straight stick. It always has a little bit of bend in the branches here and there, or some bumpiness. Okay, so grabbing more. Wash off your brush if you're picking up a lot of background color. Sometimes that happens. And maybe I'll do another one up here. So just press a bit harder and then do some weird gnarly thing. Twist your wrist a little bit here and there. So if you're looking to go above and beyond too with branches, sometimes they have like these little sticks and twigs coming out, you know, those really thin branches. You can have like little thin ones. Just press very, very lightly, even coming out from other branches. So you can see for this one, you could just have another little twig or stick coming out from there. I'm going to make a branch coming out from this tree. And just crossing over, overlapping. So press harder. And keep it nice and thin on the end. And you can have another branch come out from it, why not? I think I'll add a tiny little branch here. Pretty narrow and close to the tree. And now the branch is sticking out around this side. I'm going to go about, it really depends. You can go halfway, you can go a little bit higher than halfway. I'm going to go just slightly above halfway here and see how I'm just curling it up just a little bit, pressing a bit harder, and then it's going to thin out pretty straight-ish, right? So when I say straight-ish, I just mean it's not just a straight line. It has a little bit of bump into it, but it's still fairly straight. It's not going too far down or too far up. And from here, I'm going to have a bit of a branch off. So close to the end, just some thin lines to branch it out. And I add another one down here to fill up some space. You can fill up your space as much as you like to. Maybe I'll add some more. I'm just adding more branches. It's hard to stop here. I like to fill the space. And one more to fill the space just at the bottom here. You have a lot of empty spaces in between. Feel free to add little twigs coming out. Okay, I'm going to stop there. And you can also type in chat, let me know where you're at too, if you're done. And hopefully this was a lot easier to branch out than if you're not used to making trees. Hopefully this was pretty easy to do. I'm waiting another 2 minutes for that to dry a bit. So what I think we should do is after you've done this, go and take a blow dryer and just blow dry it. So make sure it dries pretty fast here so that we're not waiting a long time, because maybe you applied a lot of white paint and it just, with a blow dryer, it will help. So I'm going to grab myself one and then we will start. And don't worry, you're not going to hear it. I'm going to turn off the sound and we'll start with the cardinals and doing the details on the birch tree. So they're going to look very different. They'll look awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to blow dry it for, I think 30 seconds is good. We'll see. All right, are we ready to go? Are we ready to start our next step? Okay, let's get started. So while this is still drying a little bit longer, we can do more of the birch tree texture and the bark of it after, in between steps of the cardinals. Hello, Lynn, welcome. So with my detailed brush, take your smallest one. You can also practice on a piece of paper if you need to, whatever you need to do, just so that when you actually paint them on, you're happy with it. One of the cardinals that I want to start with is you can actually start with pencil too. So that's another thing, is just outline in pencil so you know where things are placed and you're not trying to guess and make it up as you go. So I'm going to take for the male that's on this is on my right side, by the way. I see that it's mirror imaging my painting in the webcam. I'm going to take just some red, although you should take your pencil for now. And just a dot of yellow. It's going to turn pretty much, it's still going to look red. It's just going to be more of a red-orange. Oh, okay, so that's good. So I'm starting with I call it just a bit of a bracket. So there's a bracket on this side, and there's one on this side. So we have a bracket here, and then just make sure it's not too narrow. So if you can if you're using your paint with me, just do a little bit of like a flick out and down, just very short, so short, for a bit of a feathery look. And for the head, start with a bit of a circle. Okay, so it's pretty small. Birds are not known for having large heads, bird brain and everything, you know. So after that, I'm just gonna do a little flick up. See? And then you're going to keep this a bit longer. So you're going to just use a bit of water and press very lightly and flick it out a little bit for more of a feathery look into the neck, and then merge it down into the body. So you're just doing short little strokes. You want that texture to sit there. It helps. Then just decide if you need to make the body bigger. If the body is if the body looks smaller in proportion to its head, definitely make it a bit more rounded, I would suggest. So for the tail, the feathery tail here, so you have just right at the very bottom. I'm not going too far out, just a little bit of a angle towards my left side. And you can do just a couple of streaks. Okay, so hopefully that's going well. We just have a base coat. Now, if for those who have, say, really transparent paint, for whatever reason you have paint that's just not covering the background, add white to your paint first, then put the actual color over top when it's dry. So that's just a little tip, just in case you are seeing too much of your background and it's not covering. Red is a interesting pigment. It's not the best for opacity on certain paints. So I washed this off. And then we want to place the female on the left side. So in terms of color, let's mix, I'm going to get my palette here. Yellow and white on top of that red orange. So right now it's just a light orangey color. Add a bit more white if it's too orange looking. Okay. This one I'm putting pretty close to this one. So if it's easier, I think starting with the body is probably best. Bit of a round. As I'm doing this, I'm actually going to do a couple little feathery strokes just out and down. So it's not just a solid line if you're painting it on. Now this might look very similar to the background. So I'm going to add a bit more white and you can see it, I think, a bit better. Curve it in. Then to go up into the head, you're just going to do, see it's curving in up here as well. All you're going to do is just make a bit of a triangle top so it has that crest at the top like the male. And at this point, it should be very close to the male head, so you don't have to make too much details around here. And I didn't fully fill it in, just along the outsides. So it's going to get darker brown in towards close to the male as a shadow. So for the tail, I'm just going to grab, don't wash off the brush, just grab a little bit of that deeper red orange again. And you can get a little bit of a tail, just a couple little streaks behind the branch there, just for now, like a little thin triangle, curving in towards the male, getting a bit more intimate, I guess. All right, let's get a bit of a brown now. So washing off that brush again, making brown. If you have a pre-mixed burnt umber, perfect. You can just build off of that. As for myself, I'm going to mix fresh equal parts red and yellow, no white. So it turns up a little bit more red, reddish orange. And a dot of black or a dot of blue to make it brown. I like to use black. A bit more, I think I'm going to add maybe a touch more red. If it's looking too greenish in color, it just needs a bit more red. And there's my brown. All right. In terms of coloring this in, around the face, let's just do a couple of flicks up. Keeping in mind we're doing a feathery look. We're not trying to just fill it in, that's it. Keeping it pretty dark, all really close to the other bird. And feather it with the groove of everything is flowing. So if it's in the crest, it's flowing upwards. So I'm just flicking it upwards like that. Around the neck, just kind of outwards and then down with the rest of the body. And you don't even have to wash off your brush. You can just take a little bit of your, see how I have this leftover orange? You can take a little bit of that. It will keep it a bit on the brownish side so that you can maybe a little bit more white. You can kind of blend it out, just a couple of streaks. So it's going from a bit really dark to a bit lighter on the edge. And how's it going with everyone so far? Okay, so I'm washing off that brush again. We're just, take it slow. Don't rush or anything. You can pause, remember that. Now I can go back into the male just to get the mask with some black basically and just a bit more texture going through. Taking a little scoop of red. Once again, a little dip of yellow because I know it's red, but it's not perfect red. Actually, red by itself, for me, it's very pink looking, and I'm avoiding pink at all costs for this cardinal. So more of a true red color. And you can actually add in a tiny, tiny, tiny little dot of black here to give it more of an earthy tone. And it's not as just pure red. So I'm maybe a tiny bit more. I'm just going to go around the edges here, make it a bit feathery looking, kind of more fluffy towards the back. Layering on some of the texture. And a little bit into the crest at the top. So I'm getting the mask going using this darker red color right where the beak is going to be. So I haven't made it yet. I'm just putting it right into the middle of the face, all pointed towards where your beak would come out. Just as a base coat to start. I'm going to add another dot of black into here, and we can put more of a wing on the side, just a little swoop towards the back. Just give it a swoop towards the back, and it gives it a more of a wing look back there. Washing this off. Okay, now I want to make the beaks on both of them. Then while that's drying, we're going to put some texture in here on the bark of the birch trees. Should be fairly dry at that point. So for your beaks, let's just take white, basically. Yeah, I'm just going to start with white. Same detailed brush. Now for the male. Just a little tiny little triangle right here. Going into the face slightly, that's okay, because we're going to put black. Remember, it's going to have black around the face. A little bit of water, more white paint. And the female, she has, depending on your space, depending on what you have to work with, there is a bit of overlap sometimes. I'm just taking a paper towel just to absorb any water, any watery bits. Don't want that. And it's going to look pretty close together in the meantime for now. But she's got this little triangle pointing down. And I will outline it when it's a bit more dry. We'll come back to it. Okay, so I don't want to mess around with that area because it's all pretty much wet there and things can get, mixed up. No fun. Okay, in here, if you have to do a third coat, that's fine too. I don't mind some of the color showing through. That's okay with me. I am going to be using, well, actually, let me use the large brush again so you can see. But also you can use your fan brush if you have a fan brush. Right? So you can use one of these guys. One of the first colors I'm going to start with is just more of a darker gray, and then I'm going to switch to some black. So I have some different gray tones going through. White and a dip of black. Get your basic gray, darkish gray. Okay, now the trick here is to wipe off a lot of the paint. Okay, so I'm just going to wipe it off. I do want a dry brush, and I don't want too much paint on my brush, otherwise it comes off too thick. I'm just going to press and just kind of flick it off to the side, a bit rounded, going in different directions. Just just to get to the look of the birch tree going for the bark. You can switch your brushes too. So this one, sometimes you have to just switch over to something a bit smaller for your flat brush. Take a bit of your paint and you can get into these areas, for example, around your branches and kind of put some around where your thicker strokes are so you have a variety and it's no longer just all the same. This makes it look more realistic, a bit more authentic. And you can also use your smaller brush to shadow, just kind of lightly fill in. Pick a side. I would say the darker side is probably your shadowed side. That's if you want to. Just some ideas. There's so many things you can do for your birch trees. And I like to use my smaller brush to outline around and bring it in a little bit on my branches. So you can see right here, just bringing it in. Do a couple little textured flicks there. Start off with something if you're not used to making trees or this kind of technique. Start off with a light gray. We're going to build onto it. Don't worry, we're going to put in actually some white that I put on afterwards. But I'm going to start with this dark gray first. Not too much paint. Wipe off a lot of the paint from your brush and then just lightly press so that it's very inconsistent. It actually shows the background a little bit and it has that, it just brings out the texture. Go on the sides, go into the middle. Leave some spots empty. I had a lot of paint there, so you can see it came off a lot thicker. Someone's asking about summer leaves. I will demonstrate at the end. Yes, no problem. Taking my smaller brush again, drying it off because I don't want it too watery. That's where the texture kind of, you lose it a bit with too much water and too much paint. Wiping some of it off and then getting a little bit on the outsides here on the little branches, a couple little streaks, and just putting it around to enhance the bigger strokes that I've done. Oh yeah, I can show you how to use the fan brush. Okay. So the fan brush, I would say it's the same thing. You're just going to coat your brush. And you can see it's fanned for a reason. You want to make sure it's doing that and you don't have paint in between. So you can wipe it off if you do so that it's staying spread apart like that. And so what you kind of want to do for this is you just have to be careful. You have to just kind of press and just kind of flick it. Do a couple of strokes there maybe. Depends on your fan brush. I know that sometimes you have more in between. You have a lot. It's more, I would say, to help enhance the texture on your already existing little streaks. I do a couple in the same spot because I don't want to make it look like I just imprinted one little stroke, but just do a couple there. Now, as we get around to the cardinals, don't forget about that area. Just keep doing as you would. Bit of outlining. And what helps is outlining some of your branches that are overlapping another tree so that you can see it too against the tree. Okay, let me show you some with black. So I'm just going to wash this off. Take your favorite brush that you've been using for making this texture, because we all have our different preferences and techniques. I liked this brush here. If you have something frayed, that's also another good brush. This one is a round brush. If you want to see how it looks, maybe you have a frayed round brush. If you're very careful using it, just keep it dry. A little touch of my black here. See, I have a touch on it. I'm just going to wipe it off. Keep it very lightly coated and frayed at the top. And you can, over top, just put in some of your black so it's not coming off too dark. You can see that there, right? Wipe it off and do the same thing. And it really creates a nice textured look. You can use a smaller brush than this. You don't have to use a giant brush. This is just one of my frayed brushes that I have. See? And then as soon as you add that texture, it brings your painting to a whole other level in terms of realistic look and all that depth too. Just a little bit of paint at a time. And it doesn't overcrowd or overdo it on the birch or the bark of the birch trees. Just a little bit. We're trying not to go too crazy because it's black and it can be a little bit dangerous when you use too much black. Don't forget to take a step back and look at your painting. That is something you will want to do. Okay, I'm going to leave that. Washing it off. And I will show you one last thing for how to break up any of your darkness. Maybe you don't like what you did, or you want to break up some of the gray. It's too clumped together. You're not feeling it. I'll wait like 2 minutes. You can let me know in chat where you're at too if you're having fun doing this. Also, know when to stop. I'll show you also with the same large brush again, just in case you're using that. So I'm wiping off a lot of the paint here. Same technique, and you're just going to do the same thing that you were just doing before with your gray. yeah, hopefully these techniques help. Hopefully they help very much, and it's a lot easier with these techniques than I guess what you've been doing before, or maybe you've never done this before. Yeah, how the tail is how I did that. When I first made this, it wasn't because I think I did it more for intimacy than I did for any wind motion. So you can put this more straight on the tail. But I just liked I just liked how it was like they love each other kind of closeness. Ah, yes. Someone's saying they're using a palette knife for the birch trees. That's perfect. That's a good idea. Definitely another good one for texture. Remember, you can shadow the edges of your branches. You can actually lightly go over in the dark area your branches. You can lightly go over it so it's not, pure white in those sections. It's getting a bit darker over here, so you can just lightly brush over it to keep it darker overall. Okay. So the last thing for the texture is some white, or you can use a super light gray. I don't find that you probably don't want it to be perfectly white. Maybe if you have too much darkness, so it depends on your situation. If you take plain white here, wipe off. You can use a little bit more white if you need to. Wipe off still some of it, and you can put in and tone down anything that's too much. You can just put in some white here. See how it's very white though? So that's where you can just add a touch of your black or your gray to it, give it an off-white look. And therefore you're not in a situation where you're painting it all white again. It just has a bit of a gray, light gray tone going through. Don't force anything though. If you are happy with the way it looks, do not force this. And of course, going back to your dark colors are easy because they're dark. They will overpower your white, no problem. Oh, nice, Vicky. Lots of birch tree paintings, great. Okay, let me know if we're ready to start with the cardinals again. After you've done your touch-ups, you can always come back and do this at the end too, when this is more dry, if it's needing to dry and you're done playing around with it for now. Going back to my detailed brush to finish up my cardinals. So I'm going to take a, it's not really just plain black. I'm just going to add in some, it looks very much black, just red and some black mixed together. It's really just a super dark red that makes it look black. See how it looks very black here? Yeah, I'm going to use that. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually make sure there's no water dripping onto this. That would be no fun. I'm going to do a little flick out from the beak and kind of upwards towards the crest and just around the beak area overall. So it's the mask part. And with your super detailed brush, I'm going to do a very light outline around the beak here. So you can see it against the female. And then you can kind of do the same similar thing, just very lightly, not too much paint here, just kind of put a soft outline around that beak behind in the crest and a weight, just kind of the same mask look. Give it some darkness around the beak. And you can put more of this darkness really close around the belly area between the two. Let's go a little bit closer here. Okay, so I'm going to take the same color, very little paint, and give it some, maybe a touch of water, not too much, just a touch of my water to give it some more detail around the wing area, a bit on the neck, around the tail, just to break up all of that same color. Adding more layers is always a good idea. So I'm just adding a bit more brown again with, see that brown we made last time? Just add a touch of black to it so it's getting a little bit deeper. More of a chestnut looking brown. Again, a burnt umber, and very lightly you can outline a bit more of the tail on the female and just a little bit onto the outside, just a couple little streaks and around the top of the head, keeping it feathery. We're not doing a full consistent outline. Okay, so we're just about done with this. I wouldn't really recommend adding an eye, only because it will probably look scary, but if you are daring enough, make sure it's not pure white, it's actually just a gray color. And you can lightly just put a little tap, tap right on the side for the male. Take black again, or your dark, remember that super dark red, black, and just keep it, just keep it really dark overall. Okay, now last little touches. For the female, don't even bother with the eyes. Trust me, you don't want to bother yourself with that. It can be quite frustrating. Last little touches, yellow and some white here. I'm just taking some yellow and white. So very bright yellow. You can put a little bit onto the tail, right? A little bit onto the side of the red cardinal. So it's just a highlight if you want to be very technical. You can even just take a bright orange and do this. Just a couple little streaks. Keep doing the little flicks. Try not to do long strokes here. It only helps you with your texture when you do shorter ones. And any little extra touch-ups on color for the female around the body areas welcome as well. This is just a orange color to mute some of that highlight if it's a bit too much. Okay, so that should be pretty much it. Yeah. Okay, so let's pull it back a bit. If you're looking to add any leaves on the tree for more of a summer look, sure, I can show you that really quick. Otherwise, thanks for painting with me. You can hop on to Artist Palette Durham Region on Facebook and show us the results. Would love to see that. We have lots of events coming up on our website too, artistpaletedurham.com. We love your support and we hope that you enjoy painting with us. I'm taking advantage of these little white streaks that I accidentally put for my arms, so I'm just making them into branches. Okay, so for leaves, okay, really depends, I think, on what type of look you're going for, color-wise, choose your color. For me, since it is getting into fall, maybe I will just do some fall leafy looks. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to use a bit of my frayed brush here, this large round brush. Let's make some, they get a little bit yellowy in the fall. So you can take big scoop of yellow, a little dot of red, take a little dot of your brown. Keep it a bit of brownish color because they do start turning brown, right? And maybe some white added to it. So you can start doing that, just like lightly tapping. You can also do little flicks, little commas. Remember, this is going beyond what we were supposed to be doing. So you don't do this if you're not feeling it. I'm not telling you to do this unless you really want to, or you can see if you want to add it in. See, I'm just kind of, you know, going over top of all my branches. I'm just clustering it, for example, in some spots and a little bit less into the lower parts of it. So it's a bit more towards the ends and then not so much where it's getting into the main part of the tree. Let's put some up here. Sure. And maybe a little bit on the end here. It seems empty. Fill up some space. Notice I'm going outside the branches a bit too. Washing this off. And then I'm going to put in some highlights. Keep it kind of simple. I'm not going to go full out. So my highlight, I want to do yellow and white more. Yellow and white. You can take your bit of orange, just add more yellow and white to it. It just turns into a bright yellowy, soft golden color instead of mustard or too yellow. Having orange mixed in with some more white and yellow, that will help with the look of the yellow instead of creating, like I said, a deep yellowy mustard color. There, just adding some kind of sparse throughout, and you can cover some of the branches. Now you have a bit more of opacity going on with an undertone of shadow and darkness behind it. So from here, again, I'm keeping it simple. I'm not trying to go too crazy, but if I were you at home, if you're doing something like this, you can add another layer of more brown, like a darker brown, if you wanted to, or maybe more red if you like the red color. And of course, if you're doing greens, just do the opposite of what I did. Take your green, darker green, and highlight with some much lighter yellowy green. Okay. Thanks for painting with me, guys. Maybe I'll see you guys again, or you'll paint with me again. Bye, everyone.